Okay, so we're going to do arms and legs. I've got my torsos that I produced in the other video, so I'm going to choose one of those. I'm going to choose this one. That. A little bit on the long side, but I like the general anatomy of it. I think it's going to be a good starting block, so I can get rid of everything else. Delete other. There you go. Starting off from scratch. So when it comes to arms and legs, I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm going to do very little actually sculpting. I'm just going to be using the move, the build up tools, the inflate tools. Sorry, not the build up tools, inflate. To shrink, build up, position, shape. Because this when we're blocking in, we're not actually getting any sculpting data in there. We don't need any sculpting data in there. We're a low resolution. Pardon me. So let's go. So how do I want to start this off? Let's start off. Let's do my arms as Z spheres, and then we'll do my legs as separate meshes to show you obviously the two different methods. So I'm going to insert a Z sphere. There it is. Click transparent down here just so I can see where it is, and I'm going to make sure my symmetry's on. I'm going to move up to the middle of the chest. Shrink it down. Obviously, I don't need to be that big. I'm going to hide it inside the chest cavity. And then I'm just going to build my arms out. So I'm going to build out from there to my shoulders. Again, thinking that in class I was talking about the deltoid almost being like a cap which sits on top of the arm. So you plug the arm in, the deltoid kind of holds it in place. So I'm going to have that there. And then draw out. But then I'm going to hold shift when I draw this out to make a sphere which is the exact same size as the one I've drawn it out from. And I'm going to draw this out about there. So I'm going to measure. So this is going to be the end of my wrist, essentially. I'm not going to do the hand length. I'm only going to go up to, like, there. Like that. That feels good. And then I'm just going to hit rotate R. And I'm just going to actually click on the tube, rotate into place. This is one thing I'm seeing a lot of people doing is you're making your arms too close to the body. You're bringing them in like this. Remember, we've got to be able to tickle the armpits of our subjects. It's just a standardized practice. We want to be able to get into the underarms. If you've got clothing, it needs to be exposed. If you've got particular muscle groups that you want to expose, they've got to be obviously sculptable. Like that. And then using draw, what I'm going to do is start to add in an elbow. Again, jump back to rotate, and then I'm just going to rotate these, and then this is it, a bit of that. So give myself a bit of a bend in the arm. So I can press A now to see what's going on with that. That's pretty good. But I'm going to be a bit fancier than this. I'm not just going to leave it like that. I'm going to start adding other Z spheres to get a bit more shape in there. So I definitely want one around my forearm here. So I'm going to just add one in there for now. Pump. And I'm going to add one right at the top near my shoulder, like that. Now why I'm doing this is I'm going to scale down some of these other ones. So I'm going to scale down my wrist a little bit. I'm going to scale down my elbow a little bit. I'm going to scale down this one I've just added in a little bit. So now when I press A, you kind of see what I'm doing. I'm getting a little bit more kind of shape in there. We can't compress or stretch these spheres. They're a sphere, but that'll give me a good start. And obviously with these spheres in place, I've not even done the whole adaptive skin yet, but what I can do is go to my other mesh. Oh, that's not symmetried. There we go, symmetried. I can go to my other mesh, my torso, and start to fit my geometry around it. Camera, please. There we go. I'm definitely needing to bring the shoulders out a little bit more. Definitely need to bring out the chest a little bit more. Push back, so pull up a bit of the trap information. for now, I'm happy with that. Cool. Now I can already tell that, as I said before, my torso is a bit long. Just putting my arms in has already kind of helped me understand that. There we go. So I'm not even going to, like I said, deal with these just yet. I'm going to get my legs in there. So might as well leave them as preview mode, and I'm going to insert my legs. So I'm going to start off with just a cylinder, and this is going to be my thigh. Oh, there you go. So you might notice I'm actually moving the manipulator around. Remember, if I hold Alt, it releases the pivot point, and then depending on what you click up here, it does different things. So if I have a pivot point which is all out with kind of rotation like this, while holding Alt, clicking the little spiral shape, little backwards arrow, that resets it back to basically world position. Home sets it back to the middle of the scene, or the little house I should say. The little pin puts it in the middle of the selected object, and this tack pin keeps it in place, so it means I can't move it around. It'll always go back to its position. And then this option here has a bunch of kind of like editing options, which can have an explore with. So that's my thigh. And while I'm here, I might as well do my modify topology mirror and weld. Oh, again, make sure symmetry's turned on. Keeping these a little bit farther apart because some of you are forgetting that at low resolutions, some of this information will kind of web in together. So obviously we want to avoid that. There we go. And just using tools I've already used to get some of those shapes in. So when I'm putting in these shapes of the legs, what I'm doing is just thinking of the overall muscles. So we've got the quadriceps at the front. It's going to be interacting with the pectoral, the pelvis here. Now already the beginning as well, what I'm doing is I'm curving this in. Get my pen out and get my little draw on screen tool up. There it is. I don't know why it's over there. So I'm doing early on is getting this curve in. So the leg curves into the pelvis, which is there. And then the stomach bends in like that. So you got these two kind of intersecting planes, or intersecting sweeps. What I'm seeing a lot of is legs just doing this into the body. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that when we're blocking in the legs that we have that curve, that blue curve we've got in there. That one. We want that curve. And same around the back. So I've kind of got a bit of a bum already in there, but what I want is kind of that shape for the back of the leg. Front leg, I'm going to be going down into my kneecap there, which is obviously then going to turn into the back of the leg, my calf. So remember all that. This is why doing draw overs and stuff is very important. So always be rotating around as well, so I can spend ages looking like that. Oh, it looks in now nice and pretty that is, but it's not right. So I need to come around to the front. So around the front again, I'll do a bit of the draw. What we've got is obviously our pelvis coming over the top on both sides. So I can already tell that this bit needs to come up a little bit. So I need to get rid of this lower bit. And then as we're talking about in class, you know, the muscles of the leg aren't super as important to know about as the arms, I would say personally. But certain shapes we want to know about. So we have the sartorius, pardon me, sorry, I'm very windy today. Sartorius, which is coming in, obviously connecting to the pelvis down across the leg, obviously that's both sides. And then you've got the quadricep, which is this old biggie muscle here. But then you've got the abductors, which are at the sides, which aren't super pronounced. but they will help you also get that hip dip from the front. And I don't know exactly what this place is called down here, but you've got a little bit of a bend in the leg like that. And then it comes down to knee, obviously. And then in. I do like bringing in the muscles around the back of the leg. You've got, oh, we didn't actually talk about what they were called. I can't remember what they're called. Basically, the back of the leg muscles, which mirror the quadriceps at the front. But their end of the tendons come around and almost like attach to the sides of the knee here and here. If I actually draw them in yellow, like here and here. I do like bringing that kind of information in, as well as kind of at the beginning overdoing the curve of the leg, just cause. So again, with all that in mind, using the move brush, constantly moving around the mesh, so I'm never spending more than like 10-15 seconds working on an area. You know, hit it with a bit of smooth. Pull it in a little bit, pull it out a little bit. When it comes to the inside of the legs here, if you're trying to use the move brush, sometimes it won't act super. I have to really drag it in like that to get it over. It's just because it's harder to pull stuff towards the center of the world. I'm not really bothering about the sartorius muscle or anything like that just yet. Okay, so I'm happy with that for now. I can either bring in another subtool, or if I'm even quicker, because I really don't care about the shape of it so far, it's still pretty much cylindrical, this piece of geometry. So I'm going to be nice and quick and a bit dirty and just grab this piece of geometry. So with the movement gizmo, hold control, drag down, and then start using these. Obviously, I put a little bit of a cut where I wanted it to kind of interact with the pelvis. If you've got that, fine. If you've not got that, fine. Just drag it back. And then just using movement tool. So again, all I've used so far is the movement tool and obviously a little bit of the knife curve. Working with that, you know, nasty geometry. That's a little bit fat for my taste, but I can just do a bit of smoothing. I like working on blocking legs in that are a little bit on the thinner side, so I can get a bit of curve in there. For me, I like adding that mass using the inflate tool and stuff. But I do recommend making legs at first just a little bit fatter, because it's easier to then take stuff away, obviously for people who've not sculpted that much. Cool. So then I got legs in there. Let's have a look at our polygroups. So our polygroups are like this. Obviously, that's not what we want, because I'm about to do that Dynamesh trick using the groups. And if I just did it on this, it'd all just Dynamesh into one. That's not what I want. Boom. I don't want that. Not for this demonstration anyway. So first of all, what I've got to do is make sure that each one of these sections is its own polygroup. So in my side menu here, I'm just going to go and click polygroups, auto group. There we go. Doesn't matter if everything is separate colors. And then groups, and make sure I've got my, let's go for 64 resolution. Let's go 32 first. Let's see what 32 looks like. Yeah, but make sure groups is turned on. Hit Dynamesh. Yeah, there we go. I think I probably could go up to 64 in this case. So make sure 64, groups are turned on, Dynamesh. There we go. So now we're Dynameshing, but we're not merging. So it allows me to then come in, go to BMT for move topological, and start to, you know, mess with the geometry a little bit. Pull down my patella and my kneecap, push in. Again, mostly using the smooth brush as a sculpting tool, not an eraser, and the move tool the smooth tool as a sculpting brush, not an eraser, and the move tool as a move tool. So that is getting stuff in there quite nicely. So I'm going to jump back up to the arms because we've not actually made those into proper meshes yet. So this is obviously a different menu set so this is a sculptable geometry menu set, and this is our Z-sphere menu set. You see how they're different? Okay, so what I want to do is go to adaptive skin, and I want to decide, right, what's my density? Well, my density, I'm going to keep a Dynamesh resolution on this. So density I'm going to put up to 3 or 4 or something like that. But my resolution I'm going to put to 64 because that is what everything else so far has been set to. So I'm keeping all my Dynamesh resolutions in the same area. Dead simple. After that, all I have to do is make adaptive skin. Boom. But remember that this now is not my sculptural mesh. It's still my Dynamesh, my Z-sphere mesh. So you can either delete it if you're completely done with it, or you can basically just add this new. So if you go to insert this skin Z-sphere 2, this is actually my arms. So I could take this Z-sphere and just move it down to the bottom, out of the way. But in this case, I'm going to delete it because I actually don't need it anymore. There we go. What I mean. And then that's the arm's good to go. So what I'm going to do is just start to work on some pieces. So I know that we were talking in class about the iliac crest. Said in it before, I needed to trim off the bottom of the groin there. My body looks a little bit asymmetrical, so let's just go do a bit of modified topology, mirror and weld. There we go. Push that up. Speed the back. That's better. No bum in there yet, but that's fine. And again, I'm keeping everything separate for now, because now that I've got my arms and stuff in there, I can make adjustments. I can keep looking around. I can see that my stomach's a little bit too round, so I might just want to push some of that in. Well, obviously depending on your subject. Maybe there's too much arch to my body. I've been telling everyone, make sure you get that curve to the body. This has got too much curve now that I've got everything in. Just a bit of adjustment. That fixed already. Boom. Pull up the back of my back a tiny bit because that's a bit too high. Jump down to the legs while we're doing it, because again, see how I'm not spending ages on one object, on one area. I'm moving around constantly. So my legs, my legs. So let's just do some sculpting. So I will start getting some major landmarks in there. So just using stuff like the dam standard at a fairly low intensity, something like that. So if I do that, no, a bit higher than that. There you go. Maybe a bit higher than that. Maybe I do want to be a bit kind of stronger. So I want to get the sartorius muscle in there. Shoom. Get that kind of at least just sketched in like that. And around the back you do have a similar kind of muscle right there, which mimics those kind of exercise or yoga pants you sometimes see where they've got the different fabric in the inner thigh. Kind of same shape. And then I'm just going to sculpt in where that quadricep muscle is, where I want the hamstring to come in. There's my hip dip, so I'm going to, this is where my gluteus medius is. It's Saturday morning, so my brain is still kind of waking up. I'm going to push back that sartorius muscle a little bit. There you go. And in fact, I'm going to merge these two together, because what I'm going to be doing is bringing in the hamstring into the right area. I'm going to bring in those rear leg muscles to the front. I'm also going to be bringing in the band of richer, the gastrocnemiuses, the ankles. I might as well put them all together. And we'll raise this to, 128. Not with that turned on. There we go. Cool. Pardon me. Bit of a cold thing coming on, I think. So just using sculpting brushes, I'm just going to knock back some of this information, pull through some of this other one. And this, a lot of this, you just got to look at, your subject, look at your references, and just be careful not to overdo this information. So I'm just knocking back some of that information, or either knocking it back or filling it in. Especially where you've got points where two meshes have kind of met and you kind of get a bit of a pinch. Just filling those in. And notice as well, I am sometimes what I call counter stroking, where I do that, I do scrub. But if you notice what I'm doing, I'm making strokes in that direction, but I'm also moving in direction of the direction of the muscle. So again, I'll get my little brush out for this. So I'm stroking in this direction, but I'm moving in this direction. And only doing lightly. So I'm not scrubbing that hard. I'm just kind of like lightly brushing. That's allowing me to build up forms quite nicely, quite quickly. And depending on what you're doing as well, it also helps to get a bit of that muscle information in there. But you'll also see me stroke lightly in the direction of the muscle. Again, I keep saying, you've got to think of muscles as strips of beef, strips of meat that you can pull across like elastic bands. So, create those elastic bands. Don't give me big cloudy muscles. Not yet. Not to say that you can't go practice, a muscly subject. It's just, you've got to control the muscles a lot with muscly subjects. You've got to make them look good. They're quite hard to do muscly subjects because, if you just make everything cloud muscle, then, it looks a bit... So now I'm just working around the front. I got the front of the tibia coming down there, sides of the patella, or the kneecap. Now, some of you might have discovered this already, maybe no one has yet, but you can do straight lines in ZBrush. It's a bit funny with the controls, but if you start to stroke and then hold Shift, you get this line here. And then if I release Shift, it creates a line. So you've just got to get the pattern in what you're doing. So I start to make the stroke, hold Shift, drag to where I want to go, release Shift, and it creates a line. So I like doing that for things like tibias and ulnas, where I can go, okay, start this, boom, boom, there you go. And you can even do it using the Alt version, so that's some chiseling in there. Okay, so I'm remembering that hip dip area like here. I'm not going to be building up much inside that area. I'm going to make sure there's a slight little dip in there. Go around the back. Might as well just build up some of this. I've done a lot in the front there, so I might as well get some stuff going on in the back. I'm not even really trying to smooth out any of this Dynamesh information where it's Dynamesh, but you're still getting those kind of like sharp edges of the previous geometry. I'm not really trying to get rid of any of that either. I'm just working with what I've got. Still low poly. Still really low poly. I'm just trying to get rid of all this obviously bad information. So when it comes to the gastrocnemius, it's like solo out the legs for now. With the gastrocnemius here, if this is our bone in the middle, this is the direction we're that's our knee in that direction. I I see the leg kind of doing this kind of shape. So it's almost like a bit of a fat teardrop. So it's not a completely round shape. So what I'm going to do is just flatten off these side bits here. Not a lot, just a little bit. Because currently this is a little bit too round. It's a little bit too much like this shape at the minute. Now that I brought in that bulge for the fibia at the front. Tibia. No, fibia. Tibia. One of them. So I'm just going to use Trim Dynamic for this. One of my favourite brushes. Nope, that's the wrong brush. There we go. Trim Dynamic. Start to knock it back. Let's change the material actually, because we've been using this grey for a while. So I'm going to use this Monster Clay grey, or I'm going to use this matte clay like that. I'm going to use what am I going to use? Yeah, I'm going to use that one. Please explore materials. You know, it's amazing what a different color would do. When I draw generally in either an off red color and or an off blue color, because drawing with grays just doesn't work in my head. It just doesn't help me see what I'm trying to draw. So what I'm doing with the Trim Dynamic here is literally just trying to get a graphical shape for the back of my Gastronemus. And then I can come in here with... I can do it. No, let's do clay build up. Let's get there. Get there. There we go. Push like some of the information back. Right, me. Again, look at the way these muscles are actually formed, where they attach, what they attach to, what's around them. Not just for sculpting, but for, for the design. Okay, I'm going to leave my legs like that for now, because I'm, relatively happy with them. Not perfect, but not really worried about that just yet. Let's go to my arms. So my arms, I'm going to treat exactly the same. Pardon me. Let me get a drink of ginger ale. Ah, right then. Yeah. So what I'm going to do for my arms is pretty much the same thing. I'm just going to use a move brush, the smooth brush, maybe a bit of trim down. In my arms, I like using the inflate for stuff as well. But number one, what I want to do is get away from everything being a perfect round shape. Because as we saw in class, we've got to think about, the shoulder is facing outwards. If we think about that link. And then the forearm, that's facing towards us. Again, if we think about that link, so it's facing like in this direction. And then we go down to the upper arm, sorry, not the forearm. And then go down to the forearm. And that's now facing that direction. And then the hand, if it was there, would be facing this direction. So, what I'm going to do is use, just like the move brush, holding Alt. I'm just going to pull out the front of the bicep a little bit. Pull out the back of the bicep a little bit. Now I'm holding Alt there because that's starting to move everything in normal direction. If I just use a normal move brush, I'm technically moving everything in this angle down into the middle. But if I hold Alt, it's going to move it backwards. Like backwards away from the mesh, because that's where all these faces are generally facing. So I'm trying to get a little bit of that bicep in there. Now here we're going to just poke, poke, poke. So this is the brachioradialaris, and then you've got the other one underneath that I can't remember the name of. But we're going to thin this off at the back, like this, slightly thin it. And I always find whenever I do arms, I always make them look a little bit stylistic for a little bit. Oh my god, I'm losing my voice. Incredible. I always make them look a little bit stylistic at first because the way that I sculpt, I like punching out the details, finding all those landmarks, and then I make it more realistic later on. I'm going to save that. So let's get the crook of the elbow in there. Let's get the bicep in. So this is why you need to have your arms up as well to tickle. I'm going to change my material because in this case that shine isn't helping me. So I'm going to go, there we go, that's better. That's my bicep. Let's get my tricep in there, so and then we get our elbow, and then our ulna goes up to our wrist bone. So what I'm going to do is just bring in a I think no, I'm going to leave that for now because I'm going to obviously be using this to make my my hand. But with that all in place, what I can do is think about, right, what do I need? So I've got my brachioradialaris, which wraps over the top. Like that. And then I'm just going to do a mask for what's underneath here. Because there are loads of separate tendons, like a lot of like individual muscles in the lower arm, in that section. I'm just not going to bother with for now. Now it's looking a little bit chubby, a little bit big, so I can do a few little tricks. Again, not worrying about making any mess as long as I can control it. I can use a the smooth brush to deflate some of this, but obviously I'm losing some of that information. I can use the inflate brush, but instead of inflating, I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to deflate. But you got to be very careful with that because the inflate brush is quite aggressive. So if I lower that sensitivity, I can just basically tap in on certain bits, just a touch. And what I can also do is use one of the functions in the right hand side menu called deformation. And in here we've got inflate, an inflate balloon. Basically do the same thing, but if we drag them to the left, that's going to deflate. And again, what I can do is, you know, so I can just nudge that in a little bit if I want to. And of course, you can mask bits off. So if you're thinking, oh, you know what, I don't want to touch the forearm. The forearm's nice. Just gonna blend that out. What I can do is then just use inflate, and it's only going to inflate that, de-inflate in this case, that one area. Using the lovely knife curve tool as well, so I can be like, okay, let's just slice that bit off, do a Dynamesh, you know, whatever you want to do. So I've not spent as long on the arms than I have done the legs, because legs are big. You know, they're a lot bigger. They tend to have a lot more muscle structure in there. Arms, really, this is too over detailed. You know, a lot of time arms are more like this. They're subtle. They're very, very subtle. Cool. So let me just go back to a different material now. I don't know why that monster clay is pink. Yeah, there we go. You know, so we're getting there a little bit, you know. Now what I'm going to do is just spend a bit more time on the body, but I'm going to use this to also talk about the muscles as well. So we're on 35 minutes, easy. So before I start working on the actual muscles, let's talk about what muscles are actually part of the body that we need to worry about. So I'll do this. There we go. So the muscles. Number one, put it up here. Put it in the middle of it. Number one, trapezius or traps. Trapezius. I think that's how you spell it. Trapezius. Now, what is trapezius? Trapezius comes from the back of the head here, connects to the back of the skeleton. As you can see that on this model, a little bit. So it attaches to the back of the skull here and wraps down and around. Down and around. Connects to the shoulder here. So if anything, it wraps round to the front. So it connects about here, then wraps back round over. And it's about that shape and that big. It doesn't come all the way down to the back of the bum or anything like that. It's about there, but you've got like connective tissues here. But that's trapezius, and the muscles kind of do this. So that's the shape. Thank you. That's the shape of the muscles. But yes, it does wrap around the front of the shoulder. It's a bit bigger, obviously, there in the drawing, but it does wrap around the front of the shoulder. Next one, let's do this in a different color. It's our deltoid. So number two, deltoid. Deltoid, that's your shoulder muscle. It's a fairly simple one. We can think of it as just one kind of big shape like this that attaches alongside the trapezius. I'm trying to double tap on the Cintiq, it's not going to work. Like that. And that's a very simple, if you're doing anything stylized or just keeping it simple, that's the shape of the deltoid. But the deltoid is made up of an anterior, posterior, and exterior, which is basically just three big kind of chicken breast looking muscles. So posterior is at the back, anterior is at the front, and anterior is in the middle, and exterior is at the front. So this is one there, and then one there. When you see these in like the reference books or Sculptor's Guide to Anatomy for Sculptors, actual sculptures, really pay attention. Good ones anyway. Really pay attention to what's going on in there, because that's a really good section to use when you're trying to make something look muscly and powerful or emaciated. So deltoid. Next one is the pectoral. Now this is the one that's kind of messing everyone up. It's the one where everyone's kind of just scrubbing it in, and then what you end up with is like bubble pectorals, and there's a lot of mass at the top here. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. What you've really got to think about is, again, these strips of meat, these elastic bands. If I draw in a clavicle, is here, going across like that. Cintiq's in a bit of a weird angle at the minute. Like that. So that's our clavicle going across like there. Deltoid, trapezius are all connecting in on this. If we start from the inside and go out to the outside, this might be a bit easy to understand. But from the inside, there's a little triangle here. Well, it's not even there. It's more like here. So if we just like here, just on the inside, just basically where the deltoid ends, there's a little bit of a triangle there where there's no pectoral, and then from there you basically got these strips which connect to just underneath the deltoid. Well, underneath, but just underneath the bone of the shoulder, the humerus, and they stretch across and connect to the sternum, which is there. So on the opposite side, you'll have the same thing. You'd have. Oh, I gotta think about this in reverse. And they're also quite high. I think a lot of people are making them far, far too low. You're bringing them down like right down here. Your pectorals are actually quite high, but they add like strips of meat. So really, really important for us to remember that. Number 4, we're going to go for the abdominals. Now they're really easy. We call them the 6-pack, but really there's 10 of them. And they attach, if we kind of quickly sketch in our skeleton here, they attach to the bottom of the rib cage at the front, and then they connect to basically lowest part of your pubis here, just above your groin. And they're literally a strip of meat, like that. Now the reason why I call them a six-pack is we see 6 shapes in the middle here. We see these 6 shapes here. But what we don't see, or rarely see, is the connective muscle group at the very top, which connects to, basically hangs on to the rib cage, and the ones at the bottom that hang on above the pubis. Now they're the ones, the top 2 and the bottom 2, they're the ones that actually contract and pull in the most to actually, you know, when we're doing crunches, when we lean over. It's when you ever do like sit-ups or you do climbing or anything where you got a lot of core exercise. You hurt more around your chest and your lower stomach than you do around the middle of your stomach, because they're the ones that are really doing the work. And they're abdominals. Now the shape of the abdominals is interesting, or good to know about, because if I kind of draw in my 6-pack here, or my 10-pack. So, 1, 2, 3. Oh, there you go. That's not the shape of the abdominals. They don't just go across like that as a straight line. Oops, daisy. What we need to think about is this. This is the actual shape of our abdominals. They go down. They kind of flow with the body. If you think of the rib cage at the top here, that's what they're holding on to at this point. They're holding on like that. And then lower ones. And your belly button, really easy one to put in. It's right there. So where you've got the top 4 that are visible in the stomach, that's where the belly button is, and then you got the bottom 2, so it'd be right there, oh my guy. Very simple. But abdominals, they're dead simple. So when it comes to the next one, the next one is the ones I can never spell right. Number 5. Oh, excuse me. The latissimus dorsi, and I've actually got the spelling right here in front of me because I need to spell it right because it does my head in. Latissimus. Lats. Latissimus. Latissimus dorsi. There you go, dorsi. Dorsey. Now I was actually drawing these wrong in class. I realised that I was drawing them like this going down. That's not how it is. These come round up into the armpit, but they come around like this. This is the shape of the lats. You have got something here called the erector spinae, which is here. But these are the lats. They come up, they like wrap round, almost like wings. And they come up like that. They allow us obviously to move and do all this kind of jazz, but they're kind of flat. Unless you kind of really work them, they're all kind of flat. So I really wouldn't worry too much. Obviously, we want to make sure that we remember where they are. I remember the shape and the direction of the muscles and stuff, but I don't really worry too much about these ones. Not too much. Now the last ones, we'll get a light blue for this one. Number 6. These are your obliques. And we're looking at 2 sets of obliques here, but we're going to crowd them into one set. Because you've got a set which is coming in here, and you've got a set which connects to it, and then comes across like this. It's kind of underneath, like that. And you'll often see like this intersecting of muscles that kind of make this kind of shape in this area here. I always call it the superhero muscle group because you always see it on like drawings. It's like a bunch of Y shapes, and then it's like boop, boop, boop. It's basically 2 sets of muscles that are interlinking, but they're linking around the actual rib cage. Is what they're connecting to. But again, the obliques, not a massive muscle structure. They tend to be quite flat. Even when they're worked out, they don't tend to be as, big as the trapezius, the deltoid, the pectorals. But the obliques. So these are the things I'm going to be thinking about when I'm sculpting. And I can even go through a bit of a checklist. I'm going to work on the trapezius. I'm going to work on the deltoid. I'm going to work on the pectoral. But I've just got to be aware of them. So make sure you have all that in your head. And it goes. Right. So what I'm going to do first of all is start working on the pectoral, and I think, do I need to bring my resolution up a little bit? Not yet. Not yet, but I will do eventually. So what I'm going to do first for my pectoral is, well, first of all, give myself a clavicle. So I'm just going to dip in these areas. I'm going to give myself, I'm going to pull in where my neck is there. My trapezius is going to be here. I'm going to pull in there a little bit. That's where my neck, that's my trapezius, that's my clavicle. My clavicle ends about here. So as soon as I start putting some of this information in, information around it starts to make more sense. So now I'm knowing, oh, okay, yeah, I need to pull that part of the deltoid back. So I'm saying I'm working on pectoral, but by working on them, I'm also working on the other bits. See if we can get a better material for this bit. That's better, so you can really see what's going on. So I'm starting to just, you know, you've got that dip in your shoulder there. You can feel the trapezius at the back that wraps around to your shoulder. So this is going to come around like this, but then you've got this bit of triangle here. And then you've got muscles coming in from your neck. You've got your clavicle, which goes right across here. And then I'm just going to push in a little bit for my, just underneath my clavicle a little bit. There we go. I think I need to flatten off some of my chest a little bit. It's a bit bulbousy. Let's have a look from the side. Yeah, just a little bit. Look at how low poly I'm working. Too many people going too high too fast. Right. So I'm going to use my damn standard for this. I'm going to start to just give myself a guideline. So we're going to come to there. And that's our sternum there. And it's going to be something like that kind of shape. Okay. That's good. So my deltoid can just shape that a little bit. I'm not bothered about any of this other geometry clipping through, because when I merge all this together, I can just, you know, get rid of it anyway. Okay. So while I'm here, I might as well start looking at my trapezius. So getting a C7, so it's going to come down to about there, it's going to come down to about there, it's going to come down to about there, and then I've got my lats that are going to be there. Might as well put, I'm not going to bum in here, but I'm just going to kind of put a landmark in for it. Then I got my lats coming in, they're going to go up, so about that. Then I got my obliques, I don't really need to worry about, and my abdominals. I think that whole section needs to get lowered as well. I'll just, oops, turn my monitor off for some reason. There we go. So my Cintiq was at a bit of an angle, so it was do my hand in a little bit. There we go. So get my trim dynamic. That's not what I wanted to do. Trim dynamic. And I'm kind of working a bit frenetically, like fast and frantic. Because that's how I like to work in these initial stages. I'll not over worry, I'll not overthink about stuff. I'll be like, I'll just move around and I'm just constantly observing stuff. And then I see something that needs you know, something changing. I'm like, okay, boom, I'll go do it. And then I'll move on. Boom, I'll find another one. I'll go do it. I don't even know if this is male or female yet, or if I even need to define anything just yet, because we're at such an early stage. So we'll just pull up that a little bit. There's a little bit long, that lat muscle there, so let's just rough in a bum while we're here. There we go. Make sure it wraps around the body. Okay, cool. My camera work is terrible. Right, so that's still at 64 resolution, but it's fine a few things. So what I'm going to do now is just knock it up to 128. Damage that. Gives me a bit more information. Now I can start getting some of that proper information in there. You know, I said I was going to work on my pectorals first. Let's do that. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do remember my size, remember my dynamicism for my clay build-up, so I'll remember what's going on. And I think I'll make it a bit of a smoother brush. Nice big smooth brush, because I'm making it smoother by upping my focal shift. And what I'll do is just start stroking in. You know, roughing in that information. Boop, 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 boop. And I'm checking as well that I'm not over swelling the pectorals. I mean, I will always break my own rules. If I do need to, I will add a bit of mass, just like the old-fashioned way, like that. But again, I'm being careful. I'm make sure I'm not adding too much. And then I'm just using Alt just to push some of that information back, so it's not quite as rich, as bubbly. Ooh, this looks a little bit sharp around there, so let's just put in some of these. There we go. So for now, that's my pectorals. Moving up, what have I got? Well, I've got my trapezius. That's a nice easy one because again it comes in from the head here. We've not obviously not got a skull, but I can approximate. And again, what I'm going to do is start building up in the muscle direction like that, knowing that it wraps over then back like this, so I could just. Where's my C7? My C7 is there, so let's just make sure that that is some way defined. Already, now that I'm working on that, I can already tell that I need to just pull back some of my deltoid here, flatten off some of that. This area here is where a muscle set called the infraspinatus lives, that you'll only really see on really, really big characters. We've all got them, obviously, it's just none of us really work them out. Like bodybuilder stuff. Onto my deltoid. I think I might need to pull that a little bit further down. Like that. Just a touch. Like that. And my obliques. Oh, sorry, my lats just need to. I think this needs to be chilled out. I'm rotating around. I'm seeing big bulgy sections of in my chest. I'm like, don't really want that. So I'm just. As I'm working, I'm also just taking care, getting rid of certain other bits that I know are not meant to be there. Oops, I've turned off my limb. So I don't know how long I've been working without symmetry turned on. So I'll just turn that back on. Now my chest is too low. Well, I don't want to have a rib cage there, so I'm just going to bring my rib cage back in slightly. I really want to send those muscles up into the armpit, so make sure that I've got that information kind of in there. So my belly button is about there. define a couple of other bits. I love pinching in the deltoid here. I think it's a really nice little shape. Still seems a little bit long, my torso, so I'm just going to make a drastic decision and just literally squish it down ever so slightly, or even, you know, some rib cage. I think my lower section is just a little bit too long, so I'm just gonna scale that in a little bit, and then obviously lift my legs up to fit it. That feels better. So I'll probably leave it there, but you can see that creating the arms and legs and stuff doesn't take too long. There's still a lot of work to do. My legs are like chicken planks. So I need to kind of work on those a little bit more, especially now that I have more of a body in there. You know, the detail is all starting to come out. My issues are all starting to come out, so I can make those adjustments. And it won't take me long. I also feel like I just need to smooth some of that off. It's a bit harsh. Not too much though. So yeah, building a body like this, dead simple. Really simple. We just got to think about those rules, you know, making the arms and legs. You know, we saw how we did that. You can make the legs the same way as I made my arms using Z-spheres. You can make everything from separate shapes like I did with my legs. It's all up to you. We're just checking all the time. We're always rotating around. We're thinking of muscle structures. Not to the point of making them like Chad workout bros, but just so we're very clear of what's going on. Because I can do something like that and then smooth it right back. Carefully anyway. Carefully. So that the muscle information we've got is more of a lighting suggestion. I keep pressing V. But I still need to, you know, I need to go around and take some of that lumpy information off. That's a bit lumpy there. Smooth that off. That's better. I've not got my band of Richer, which is a beautiful little strip of fat and muscle, which you sometimes see kind of coming over the top. Which is this. You know, you'll see that in a lot of people who either, weirdly, either overweight or incredibly in shape. It's like a little bit of a band of Richer, it's called. And then all the stuff in the body. You saw how I made the body really fast in the last session, and I just chose one of the bodies that looked kind of okay. You know, I liked how it had kind of like sharp lines to define certain features. I could have used any of the other bodies. You saw how I had to make adjustments to that body. Now that I started getting arms and legs in there, there's still tons to be done, but it's now when you start getting stuff in, it's not hard to make those adjustments. You know, just by doing that, then I just moved up my shoulders, which means I have to move up my arms. Which means I have to, you know, it's just all you're constantly making adjustments. That's better. That's better. See? You look away for a couple of minutes, you look back, you see something, you make adjustments, you fix it. Boom. And just the last one, I'll just connect my legs to my body. You know, God, that already does make a ton of... Just sorting out them shoulders then, tons of difference. So, merging these things together, all you've got to do is make sure that you're merging your most important part down onto your whatever part you're merging to. So my body's the most important part here. So I need to make sure that I'm merging that onto my legs. So I'll bring my legs underneath. In the subtool, literally just click and dragging it into place. And I'm just going to merge that down. Like that. And if you've got, say, your legs at 64 resolution and your body at 128 resolution, if you merge your body down onto your legs, it maintains that 128 resolution. Boom. So now all I have to do now is select what I want to get rid of and fix up, and select what I want to keep behind. Because some of that information from the merge is actually useful. I find it quite useful. Like maybe I don't want to push all that information away. Maybe I want to keep some of this information. Some of it like this, I definitely want to kind of push back. And there's points as well at this resolution that it's hard to maintain well. If you're doing a nude sculpt, or if you're doing like a creature or something where you've got folds, so around the groin here, you might have like layers of fat on the inside of your thigh, layers of fat on the inside of your pubis, or your groin, like here and here. And in real life, they would obviously sit on top of each other and kind of, squish together. But obviously, when you're doing Dynameshing, it'll just Dynamesh together if you try and do that. So there's certain things we just can't be worried about. But this should all, yeah, so they still got some polygroups left. But I'm going to leave it like that for now. You can see that it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's well on its way. And this is an hour for me doing this. But if I was doing this in anger, this should be about half an hour. Obviously, when I'm not talking and doing writing and that kind of stuff. So when you get into it, you're able to smash out something really fast and well if you just keep observing stuff. So I'm going to leave it like that for this one. And if you hear what I'm saying, if you listen to what I'm saying, you'll be able to start really getting these bodies in there very nicely. And this is 128, not high resolution. We're not even dealing with 224 right now, or any higher resolutions. This is low resolution sculpting. We're getting all the information we want to in. It also allows us to sculpt back, get rid of some of that lumpy information before I go higher, because that lumpy information is sometimes really hard to get rid of at a higher resolution, because it's just there's too much of it. Okay, cool. See you in the next one.